Hello friends, it is Elagatua, and I am back after a very long time with another Advanced Wars by Web video. To start this off, I figured I'd talk a little bit about what's been going on. It's been, I think, a couple of months since I've put anything out. The first big reason for why I've been a little bit inactive is I have a young son, and he was born middle of last year, and just been very busy being a father. It's a lot of fun. I love it. And so it's taken up a lot of time though. And so I've had to kind of cut down a little bit on the time that I was doing competitive gaming. So that's been one big reason. But another big reason is that I have another side project that I sink a lot of my free time into. And actually it's something that predates my play in Advanced Wars by Web. The Zelda Ocarina of Time randomizer community is pretty awesome, and it's been something that I've done for a long time, for probably like close to 5 or 6 years now, I think is when I started. And I have my own game mode for Zelda Ocarina of Time randomizer called Triforce Blitz. So I know that the overlap in the audience between Advanced Wars by Web and Ocarina of Time randomizer is probably nothing. But if this sounds interesting to you and you want to check out what a game mode designed by yours truly would be like, and you're interested in speedrunning, or you just want to kind of do some puzzles, that's kind of what the experience is like. You can check out www.triforceblitz.com, and there's a wiki as well. I'll put the link in the description if you want to check that out. And if not, no problem. We'll be back on to our regularly scheduled programming momentarily, but we have the season 3 of Triforce Blitz just released, I think, about a month ago, and that's something that I do game design and also development for, so I do some coding on that. And so that's something that ate up a lot of my time preparing and launching and working with the community on that effort. But that is now out and available to everybody, so not taking up as much time as it was before. So anyway, that's enough of the obligatory plugs. Let's get to the reason why we're all here today, and that is to talk about my favorite map, Quota Iota. This is a map that's been on the FOG Global League rotation for the current rotation as of April 2024. I don't know if it will survive into the next rotation whenever it arrives, but it is my favorite map currently. I just really like it. I think it's a lot of fun, really dynamic, and I imagine that at this point many of you have seen the collaboration that I did with Degis going over my replay against Rip on this map. And just like with the series that I did on Logarithmic, where I spent one video talking about the map and another video going over a game in extreme detail, this video is going to be covering the map and general strategy for this map, going in depth into my opener and more mechanical analysis of the map. And we will leave the case study video and just I will refer you to the Degis video. That is the video to look at if you want to go really in depth into a specific game on that. So I will not be making a companion to this video. Just go check that other one out, and that will be linked as well. So Quota Iota. Let's take a look at this beauty. So first of all, let's take a look at the fundamentals, right? So we've got player 1 down here, 2 factories here, and then the third factory is kind of in the middle, but it's still 2 infantry moves away from either of your factories because this mountain is in the way, preventing an infantry from going straight over this way. And then for player 2 up here, same deal, third factory here. We got 2 airports up here and down here. We have one safe comm tower that is tucked in behind your factories, so you're always going to get one for free. But there is a second comm tower on the kind of in the middle of the map on each side that ends up being a very contestable comm tower that can be fought over in the middle to get up to 2. Furthermore, your HQ is tucked away kind of behind these mountains over here and behind these mountains over here. And you'll notice that there's a black boat on the HQ, and this black boat does have a way to escape to the water and can be used to shuttle infantry up through this route. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here with this map. So the first thing that you probably want to understand about this map is how does it divide down the middle? I will tell you how I divide this map in my head, and then I will explain why. So if you just want to see kind of which cities are yours and which cities are your opponents, then you can just refer to this little line that I'm drawing. So I'm going to draw it here, like so, like that. Okay, so all this is P1, and all this is P2. Now that doesn't mean that all of this stuff is free for P1 and the other stuff is free for P2. That's definitely not the case, but this is the standard way that I would break everything down as in terms of which properties are more easily captured by which player. So if everything is totally even, then this is how everything is going to break down. And let's talk now about why that is. So one thing you'll notice very quickly, if you look at the factories here, is that there are a lot of mountains all around the factories for player 1 and similarly on player 2. And so if we look at how the mountains interfere with the movement of units getting out of where they're built, you'll notice that this factory here has a direct path to this part of the map without getting blocked by any forests. This factory has a relatively clear path over to this side of the map. There's one forest in the way, which is going to slow your vehicles down, but it's not too bad. And then this factory is blocked by a ton of stuff. So if you want to send stuff to the left, you've got to go back around here and then around this mountain as well. So you either have to send it up through like another forest or like down this way, and it's just a mess. Alternatively, if you want to send units to the north side, you can kind of come around here, but you're going to the right, and then you're going through a forest, and then you're going back to the left, and then finally up. So this factory here and this factory here have really convoluted reinforced routes to get whatever comes out of there to the front lines. Because of this, there is a clear difference between all the factories. This is the fastest factory, and this is the slowest factory. So generally, what you want to do is you want to build your most important units from this factory because they will get to the fighting faster. And this factory is the lowest priority. So generally, this factory becomes a infantry base because everything through here is slow, and also infantry at least can go over this mountain, and so they're only like kind of one move slower getting to where they need to go. So infantry are definitely more efficient from this base than anything else that you could build from this base. With that being said, if you're playing this the most efficient way, what this means is that if you're building your most important units from here and you have the unobstructed path to here, this means that this side is the strong side for player 1, and this side is the strong side for player 2. So player 1 in player 2. Now, that being said, the reinforced distance to these two comm towers is very close for both players. But if we count from this base here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's one tank move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 2 tank moves. So with 2 tank moves from this base, player 1's tank can hit something that is on the comm tower. Now let's go from the other direction. So let's take this base here, which is the fastest base to this comm tower. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from this base, actually, it is 3 moves to contest something on this comm tower. This is kind of the line, right? So what this means is that these comm towers end up being super contested. As you can imagine, they're the closest things to the middle of the map for both players. But it's that much more difficult for player 2 to get this comm tower because it's much more easily contestable from this factory for player 1. And vice versa, it's very hard for player 1 to ever capture this comm tower because it's very easily contestable from player 2's reinforcement route. So, because of this, that makes this side kind of the strong side for player 1, and this side the strong side for player 2. By default, you don't have to play that way, but it is the most efficient. So you don't have to choose whatever strong sides I tell you. You can just kind of build your units and send them wherever you want, but that is technically the most efficient strong sides. And generally speaking, you're going to have better success if you're playing how the map funnels you the majority of the time. Okay, so as you can imagine, we talked about contestable properties. Comm towers, extremely contestable, in the middle of the map for both players. Let's talk about other contestable properties. So the number 1 other contestable property on the map in terms of cities is going to be these corner cities. And if you're playing on a split map in Quota Iota and you're trying to look for a city that is hard for your opponent to defend, these corner cities are the best targets to go after. The reason for that is even though player 1 has a good reinforced route to the comm tower, player 1's reinforced route to the corner is really messy because you have to go, up here and then back down here to the corner, or you can go this way, but you still have to go through a forest and then down and then back up again. So additionally, these supporting bases, these supporting factories, are even further away from this side because this has to go through the forest, and then it's got the same pathing issues if you are going in this direction because then you have to go all the way back down. So this city tends to be very vulnerable. It's hard to defend for player 1, and vulnerable for the same reasons for player 2. And it's actually something that, as player 1, if you're trying to assault in this direction, this is something that you're going to have decent access to because of this black boat. Now, normally the reinforced to go all the way up here is pretty bad for the same reasons. You've got mountains kind of blocking your direct path, as well as forests and things like that. However, with this black boat, you can put the black boat here and get infantry all the way up to here and here in one move. And so that boost ends up being pretty substantial because from these 2 squares, you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's 2 infantry moves away from this city. So it's difficult to get to from vehicles, but it's not actually that far away from infantry. So that tends to be something that if you can gain control of that corner, you're generally going to have the infantry available to get after that city. Additionally, the reinforce is terrible for vehicles, but if you'll notice this airport here, you can just fly stuff over the mountains. And so actually supporting assaults with copters ends up being pretty efficient. I don't think it's 2 moves away. I think it's 3 moves away, but let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, it is 3 moves away with a copter, but you can get copters in 2 moves along this line here. My not quite straight diagonal line there. And that can be pretty good because if you can get infantry kind of in this area here, then you're threatening to be able to control that. And so all that's within 2 copter moves. So corner city, definitely the #1 contestable thing. The safest thing to assault if you're trying to assault something. In terms of other contestable cities, this city is definitely very contestable. This city surprisingly can be a little bit contestable. And then these 2 are tough, but could be contestable. Maybe this one more than the other one. It kind of depends on how the map plays out. But definitely, so this one is like your first priority, and then this one's like your second priority, I would say. And then 3, 4 in terms of what you can target. Okay. So that's how I would prioritize things. Now, you may notice some properties that you might think ought to be contestable, but I haven't marked here. So let's talk about the ones that I haven't marked and why I don't think they're very contestable. And the one that jumps out to most people probably would be this city and then this city and the corresponding cities over here. So those 4, I think, are not that contestable. The reason for that, let's start with this city. So this city would be a player 1 city. So this belongs to red under normal circumstances. The reason this is hard to get for player 2 is because of the black boat infantry reinforce. You can actually get infantry here very easily, and then they can go onto this mountain to contest any caps of this city. In general, anything behind these mountains, like this whole area here, is a total no man's land for player 2. Like if player 2 is in this area, you're really, really overextended. And unless you have control of this area as player 2, it's very difficult to prevent interrupts of captures on your city. So in practice, it's just very difficult to get control of this zone for 2 turns because it's so difficult to get like player 2 vehicles back here. Like player 1 can stick an artillery in this forest here, and like how are you gonna deal with that? You're gonna have to get like an infantry on here to spot for it, and then like a tank here, or somehow you're gonna have to loop around here, but then you're next to the HQ, and just you can forget about this square entirely. So it's really hard to gain control over this tile. So you can delay it with some early game harass, but I don't really think it's something that you can expect to actually flip very easily. This tile actually ends up being easier in practice, even though it feels like it's farther away from player 2. It ends up being less defensible for player 1. Likewise, this city here in the middle, it seems like it's actually very close to the middle of the map, right? Like it's two moves from the middle. But actually, if you look at the factories here, you get 2 factories here, and their reinforced routes to the center are actually very short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is less than 2 tank moves it's 2 tank moves from 2 different factories. So actually being able to hang on to this area when it is so easily reinforceable from two separate bases, it's very difficult to pull that off. So the other cities that I mentioned end up being much more flippable, even though these two cities here are very close to the center of the map. Okay. That's going to cover all of our contestable properties here. Now, let's talk about early game and mid game and what to think about when you are playing. Now, obviously, there's going to be some level of CO specific tactics that will go on this map, but I'm going to talk about things at a high level in general. The early game, you want to have a efficient cap phase. I don't think this is generally a very good harass map. There's a lot of limits to the harass that you can do. And part of the reason that harass is difficult is because there's a lot of key vision that you can get on your defensive side. So for player one, these mountains, and this mountain especially, this mountain for player one and this mountain for player two are super, super critical. So generally, you're going to be able to control the mountains on your side of the map, which means you're going to get the high ground vision from there. And if you have the high ground vision, that's going to make you less susceptible to harass because you're going to generally be able to see the harassment before it comes. But also, on each side, the vision is imbalanced. So for player one up here, player one gets kind of free vision of this area, right? And anything in here is very easily able to be seen by player one, but there's no corresponding mountains on the other side. The closest mountain is like way back here, and that doesn't let you see very far. That's only letting you see like to here. So if you're trying to harass this way, you're basically not going to be able to harass with the element of surprise. And furthermore, you're going to be harassing into probably a blind spot where you're not going to be able to see whether your opponent is going to have units there to counter you. So harassing tends to be pretty risky. Additionally, if you're harassing into like these two properties, the infantry have a very easy escape route because they can hop onto these mountains or just back here, and you kind of can't do much if they go back there. You're going to be risking whatever units you're harassing with. So I don't really love the harass. Additionally, if you try to harass on like the center property or on these properties, you're harassing into very likely possibility of tanks that can be 1 or 2 moves away, because the natural reinforce route is going through here. And so if you're harassing with like recons as player 2 onto these 2 cities here, the chance that player 1 just happens to have a tank in range is very realistic, and best case, there's going to be like a tank there next turn, right? Because the odds of there just being tanks by happenstance is really high. So I just feel like harass is very high risk and low reward because the cities that you want to harass tend not to be things that you can harass for a long time to actually like lock down. I think that's really tough. So with that being said, in the early game, so I don't love harassment. So I think that capture efficiency is really important. Get your stuff, get it quick, and set yourself up for the mid game. I think especially is really good on this map. That being said, you're wanting to, in the early game, set yourself up to, for player 1, you want to contest this comm tower and you want to threaten this comm tower. And for player 2, you want to threaten this comm tower and you want to contest this comm tower. So you definitely don't want to let your opponent get the comm tower for free. You may need to give it up in some cases, depending on how you allocate your vehicles and how your opponent allocates their vehicles, and that's fine. But if you give up the comm tower, you need to make sure that you get yours, right? because that's a major win condition. It's very, very, very difficult to flip the comm tower once you've taken it, or once your opponent has taken it. So if you get down a comm tower here, it's very hard for you to be like, okay, player 2 got this comm tower, now I'm going to all in and try to flip it to mine so that I'm up 2-1. That ends up being really hard in practice. It actually ends up usually being easier to be like, okay, I'm down a comm tower, I just need to all in this comm tower to try and even it up. But that ends up being predictable. So it ends up being very important managing the comm towers so that you don't get yourself in a hole where you need to commit to overextending to try and get the map objectives that you are going to get. Okay. In the mid game, once you have your stuff and once you're in position to deal with, to defend the comm towers that you need to defend and to pressure the comm towers that you need to pressure, you want to fight for the corners. Fighting for the corners is really important. There's a lot of fighting that kind of happens in this area. That's where all the fighting tends to happen. So you want to fight well in the corners. You want to figure out what you're going to do about the black boat, because the black boat is for player 1 is going to be your infantry reinforce up here. And for player 2, it's going to be your infantry reinforce down here. And there is no port on this map. So if you start shuttling infantry up to that corner, eventually your black boat is going to get low on fuel. And so you need to think about what you're going to do about that. Now, if you're someone like Jess, you don't really need to care because your CO power is going to refill it. But if you're anybody else, then it's not so simple. And so you need to think about, can I get away with building like an APC from this base in order to refuel the black boat so that as the game goes on, I am able to get the infantry up to this corner very quickly. Because if you no longer have this black boat, your infantry reinforced to that corner is like so slow. You have to go around stuff. You have to go around all the mountains. You got to go over this mountain. It's really, really slow. So not having the black boat really limits your ability to pressure these corners. And additionally, your infantry reinforced to this corner is awkward already because you're building vehicles from this factory. So if you don't have the ability to threaten this corner and you're always going to be struggling to get infantry to this corner, well, you lose both of the corners, you get an income disadvantage and potentially lose the game. So that can happen very easily. So that's something that you need to think about. What am I going to do with the black boat? When am I going to build an APC? Am I going to build an APC? Can I get away with it? And invest the income in that. Additionally, one nice thing about having the APC is once you've built it and you've refueled this black boat, if you park the APC here on this tile, then you can build an infantry here and unload it. You can boost it to here. And then the next turn, you're within one move of the black boat. So getting the APC is not worthless, or is not worthless outside of refueling the black boat. It actually is a long-term benefit to your infantry reinforced because it's going to get your infantry to that corner one move faster. So that's something to, especially in the early mid-game, your black boat tends to run out of fuel around like day 12 or 13 or so if you've been using it a lot. So that's something to think about. Again, you really don't want to overextend. So you need to show like some discipline. You don't want to be fighting like in this area as player 1 and this area as player 2. That's where bad things happen because then you're kind of within two reinforces from the factory and you're likely to lose the battle just because the reinforce rate is much faster for your opponent than it is for you. And you want to think about your unit composition. So half map on this map is 23K, which is pretty high. And with 23K, you have 2 airports. So if you split the map down the middle, you will have the money to potentially build from both airports every turn if you want to. 2 copters plus 3 infantry is 21K. You could even do 2 copters, 2 infantry, and a mech for 23k. Now, you can't always count on having your full income every turn because you might need to repair stuff and things like that. But double copters is absolutely an option and can be very good because having a lot of infantry can help you win in these corner fights. And sometimes you can even get away with having a disadvantage in vehicles on one of the corners because you can afford to trade slightly inefficiently with infantry to just delay caps and ultimately establish a income lead through tempo, controlling the other corner faster than your opponent can control your corner. So yeah, fighting for corners, don't overextend, figure out what you're going to do with the black boat, and figure out your composition, and definitely consider building a lot of air units because infantry is very strong, especially if you have good reinforce with T-copters and with the black boat and with an APC. Okay. That's the flow of the game at a high level. Let's talk about CO picks. For Tier 4, in Global League, Sammy is banned in Tier 4 on this map. So with Tier 4, I tend to have a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I really think that Tier 4 is generally pretty balanced and that you can kind of play whatever you want for the most part, and it's not usually going to cripple you. I don't really think there's like any game-losing picks in Tier 4. So I think Jake and Jess and Adder are all kind of viable. I think Adder maybe just a little bit less, and Cole is not that great. If this tile were a road instead of a bridge, I think Cole could actually, and maybe like some of these tiles here, I think maybe it could be a little bit different, but I don't really love Cole too much. But the other 3 definitely seem fine. So kind of pick what you want. Jess definitely has some nice playability because you get the free refill on the black boat, which is really nice. You don't need to invest in APC. That being said, there tends to be a lot of infantry fighting on this map, and so that's something that can end up being difficult for Jess because this map tends to have a lot of air units and a lot of infantry. And so Jess is a little bit weaker at both of those. So you can make an argument for Jake there, and you make an argument for Adder there with the strength of Adder's copters getting the extra movement and Jake getting a lot of bonuses because, the whole, contested area, like a lot of this area next to the cities is plains. So you're going to get a lot of plains bonus with Jake, and you're going to get some value out of those Jake copters getting damage boosted as well. So do what you want in Tier 4. For Tier 3, I really think Andy is terrible on this map. You would think that Andy might be good because of the copters and Andy copters being good. I don't think he's that good. In practice, I like Kindle because I just think Kindle is fun to play, and I think there's a lot of skill expression. You can definitely play Drake as well. There's, in practice, a lot of fighting that ends up happening on properties because these comm towers are so contested and this city is so close to the comm tower that it's very hard if you're playing against Kindle to avoid the cities because just like this, all these tiles, well, not all these tiles, right? But like these tiles and these tiles, right? So there's your terrible hourglass art. All of those tiles are going to be within one square of a property, and you tend to have a lot of infantry fighting on the properties in a corner. And so Kindle is very good at that, and also very good at defending against infantry when Kindle already has the city. So I think Kindle can definitely play against Drake on this map. even though the global damage is pretty strong, and the incomes are relatively high, which makes global damage stronger. So pick whichever one you're more comfortable with. And if you don't know what to do, you can always pick Drake. I mean, it's global damage forehead, right? For tier 2, I like Olaf. I like Eagle. Olaf is simple. So again, global damage forehead. If you are playing against Olaf, the snow can really affect the reinforcement paths from these bases here, because the forest kind of slows everything down, and then there's a lot of plains too. So that is kind of one argument against Eagle, but at the same time, you're going to have a lot of air units. It's very hard to force Eagle to fight. You can kind of turtle with Eagle as long as you don't put yourself in a hole in the phase before the CO powers hit. So I tend to think that Olaf and Eagle are both playable. Max could be interesting. I don't think Max is good against Olaf. I think Max could potentially play against Eagle on this map. But the problem with Max is that Olaf and Eagle Olaf especially can play against both Max or Eagle, but Max really, I don't think, can play against Olaf very easily. So if you're picking Max, you have the high risk that your opponent picks Olaf and you're kind of in a bad situation. So that's the only reason I don't like Max so much on this map. But I think there's possibilities, especially Max Copter is pretty strong. Okay, and tier 1 apparently is not enabled for this map in Global League. I don't know the rationale for that, but it makes. I mean, my theory. I am saying this without knowing any reasons at all. My theory is that the Sturm infantry movement for this map is really, really busted because of all the mountains, and so Sturm ends up being really broken. So then you ban Sturm, and then you just are left with Hawk mirrors. So I do think that they probably got rid of tier 1 because there's no way to set it up so that you actually get counter picks. It would just be either Sturm mirrors or Hawk mirrors, and that's kind of it. Okay, that is the high-level breakdown of this map. Let's talk about the Elagatua opener on this map. I am vain enough to name it after myself because it is so cracked and I love it so much. It's so much better, in my opinion, than pretty much anything else. And we are going to talk about it in excruciating detail. And by the end of this, you will know exactly why I like it so much and why I think it is really, really difficult to counter, even if you think it's coming. We'll talk about all the variations and everything you could possibly want to know, because we have 4 different replays that we can look at for me doing this opener. So, what is the Elagatua opener on Quota Iota? Basically, what it is it involves a delayed cap on which city? It's a delayed cap on this city. In this city, you basically get this airport really, really quickly. And then once you get the airport, you time the capture of this city so that this infantry that's just finished capturing this city and this city will be ready to load into a T-copter that you've built the previous turn, so that you can basically take this infantry which is stuck in the corner and slingshot it out this direction, and it makes your capture phase much stronger, because otherwise the infantry reinforce for player 1 to this side and for player 2 to this side. Again, we talked about the pathing is really awkward, and having a T-copter there tends to solve a lot of those problems. And if you're going to buy a T-copter, generally you want to buy a T-copter as early as possible to just get the absolute maximum value that you can and shell as many infantry as possible as you can over there. Additionally, there's some other ways that we can utilize the T-copter later on to even get more value out of it. Another reason why the T-copter is so insane, and this is actually a good tip for analyzing a map where you think a T-copter might be good. Look at the layout of these 3 properties here. So this airport is 3 squares away from this and 3 squares away from this, which means that T-copters can move 6. So the T-copter is going to be able to move in one move here or here, which is perfect range for boosties from both of these factories. So it is it's in perfect range to boost 2 infantry on the second turn that it's been created. So not only are you slingshotting this infantry from the middle of nowhere all the way out to a place where the infantry is going to be useful, but you're going to be setting up boosts of 2 infantry on top of that. So that's crazy. And then forevermore, you will be able to get 2 boosties if you want them by putting your T-copter in one of these 2 squares or in one of these 2 squares. So T-copter, really, really, really good. Furthermore, we already talked a little bit earlier about why I don't think harass is that great on this map. And if you're not really at risk of harass, then T-copter is even better because you can afford to be more efficient and invest in your economy and getting properties quickly, since harass tends to be more risky. So that's a little meta, but all of these reasons are why I think the T-copter on this map is the best opener for sure. The goal of the Elagatua opener on this map with the T-copter, I'm just going to call it the T-copter opener. I feel ridiculous calling it the Elagatua opener, even though it's mine. The goal is to basically set up, for player 1, we want to get these 2 properties, and for player 2, we want to get these 2 properties. So we're setting up quick access to those 2 properties so that we can lock down our side of the map quickly in the early game. That's one goal. The second goal is we want to get this, and this property for player 2, and this, and this property for player 1. We want to get those capped on day 7 for player 2 and day 8 for player 1. So these are some of the most, I mean, if any properties are harassable, it's those properties. So we're going to get to all 3 of those properties on the same turn, which generally means that the worst case that could happen is you get harassed on one of those properties. And that's the worst case because you're getting them all in the same turn. So it's very difficult for your opponent to harass multiple properties if you're capping them all in the same turn. You generally have, in the worst case, you're getting harassed by a recon and there's only one. So they'll have to choose where they're going to harass. So it's very important to keep the timing in mind. And you're going to see in these replays, I'm going to show you what it looks like on day 7 for player 2 and on day 8 for player 1. And you're going to see kind of what the board state looks like and what we're trying to set up for. Another thing that you want to keep in mind, and this is the build that I went for against Rip. For player 2, instead of capturing this property on day 7, you can actually make a risky move to try and go for this comm tower on day 7. So it's day 7 for player 2 and it's day 8 for player 1. Because this is not really it's not really a move that you can support very easily with vehicles. So if you're going for this comm tower early on day 7, you're kind of just hoping that your opponent doesn't have vision. So as player 1, you need to keep in mind that this is a thing that somebody can do. Okay, so player 2 can go for this city, this comm tower on day 7, and so I think it's wise to have some sort of countermeasure that will at least deny that. So that could be getting vision on this mountain. It could be having a recon like here, or sending a recon this way. lots of things can work, but just be advised that if you're player 1 and you don't have that vision, you're kind of taking a risk and you're hoping that the player 2 didn't go for that aggressive build. Likewise, because the timing for player 2 is day 7 and the timing for player 1 is day 8, that comm tower cheese build works better for player 2 than it does for player 1, because player 2 has like an extra turn to get in position to see that. So just something to keep in mind. So there's one last thing we'll talk about for this T-copter build, and that is when you build a T-copter very early on this map, there's a way that you can get your T-copter back here on this square and on this square after you ferry out the initial sets of infantry that make it work really well for building like one mech. And the reason this is especially good is because you got your T-copter on this tile here, and so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the mech goes in these forests. Likewise up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mechs in the forest. So that is a really good way to utilize mechs. And if you get a mech in here, you're covering, this diagonal. Not the whole diagonal, right? But and additionally, like you can get into this forest as well potentially. Not within one move, but within 2 moves. So there's potential there, right? It's very, very quick reinforce, and it gets around this tile, which otherwise is going to mess up all your infantry movements. So, and this tile down here for player 1. So, I'm not an advocate for like mass mechs, but especially in the early game, because you're investing money in a T-copter, you end up having less vehicles. So getting an early mech out there can kind of compensate for a early vehicle disadvantage, and it's very, very efficient in terms of movement and in terms of income as well. So something to think about, and I will show you the exact mechanics of that as we go through my opener. So this opener does work both as player 1 and as player 2. It's basically the same thing. There's some minor differences, but the concepts work totally fine as both players. So let's go through this one. So this one I am going to be... Actually, I'm not going to go through this one. We're going to come back to this one. I am going to go through some variants of this build. So I've got kind of 3 variants of this build as player 2, and then I'm going to show you one variant of it as player 1 to kind of highlight the differences so you can see it in both positions. And we're going to go from least risky to most risky in order, and kind of explain why as we do this. So I want to find the replay that I want to find. It's this one. Oops, it's not that one. It's this one. Okay. Oh, my zoom is off. That's annoying. Okay, well, I had set this up so that the screen would be centered, but I neglected to think about the changing replays and the zoom resetting. So anyway, we're here now. So I am player 2 on this map. So day 1, we're just gonna send the infantry towards this base. Nothing exciting there. We send this infantry here instead of here, and we send this infantry down instead of up. And this is going to set up for the timing where we're going to have this city capped with the T-copter ready. So that's why we do that. You're technically taking, I think, maybe an income hit. I don't know how it actually works out. It ends up not being that big a deal. And the income curve works really beautifully. So we keep going. You can kind of just see where everything is, and it's good enough to copy. And I'll put a replay pack in the description as well. So if you want to grab these replays to copy for your heart's content, you're welcome to do that. Anyway, so day 4, this is the critical day because I end up with 8,000 gold, which is enough for 3 infantry and a T-copter, which is exactly what I want to buy. So now I've got a bunch of infantry over here. I've moved my black boat up over here, although I don't need it until I think the next turn anyway. And now we are going to take advantage of that T-copter positioning. And we only boost one infantry because we don't have enough space to put the third infantry. So we just send the third infantry this way. It ends up not really mattering, but we get, you know, this infantry goes from here to here in one turn, which is pretty awesome. And then we get a boost on this infantry. And this infantry now is within 2 moves of this city. So we're getting to this city 1 turn faster already, simply because we have the boost. And this infantry basically wouldn't exist if it wasn't ferried up from the top left. So you can see how efficient this is. And then we have enough income. We got 8K here. So this turn you can kind of build either an artillery or a recon. I do like the artillery, and I will show you why shortly. But you have some options. All right, so we're back here. Notice that I am taking this comm tower on day 6. I actually think you could probably delay this comm tower cap another turn. I maybe did this 1 turn earlier than I needed to, but okay. So this is the safe version of this build because we're going to get to this city on day 7. So it's day 6, we're getting to this city on day 7. And the reason this build is safe is because we are putting this infantry in this woods here, which means that we can see the city. So that way, if my opponent builds a recon and plops it here, we're going to see it and we're not going to get trapped. The downside to doing this is now our T-copter is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the furthest we can get it back is here. We can't get it back here. And we talked about the mech positioning here. So we're moving our infantry 1 square farther than we needed to, because we could technically have the infantry like here, and we could still reach the city. But we moved it 1 square further just to get the vision. But the downside is that this T-copter is not going to be in position to get back all the way here for a mech boost. Okay, so that's why this variant of the build is the safest. You're going to get, there's no way you're going to get trapped on the city there, but you're sacrificing the mech play, getting that early mech. But it's safe. And then we get a tank. Okay, and on day 7 now, we've got 2 infantry going into this black boat. And so 1 infantry, this guy's going to go this way. This guy is going to go this way. And these infantry are not very easily harassable. So they are definitely super exposed, but it's very risky to send a recon like all the way back here for player 1 to do that. So not impossible, but just risky. Okay, so this is one option. So I send the artillery here to cover this. This infantry is not really in a ton of risk of getting harassed, but it's mostly just to keep the artillery safe and to cover something, because we're going to get this tank up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if the recon comes and harasses this infantry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got it covered with the tank. So we don't really need the artillery to be covering this. And if there was a recon like kind of over here, and we put the artillery here, then maybe we get popped and it's not great. Although if the recon gets popped, or if the artillery gets popped, then we can actually get the recon for free. So wouldn't necessarily be the worst, but anyway. And this is another one of the reasons why I think that harass is just really difficult on this map. So even though we're getting to these center cities really quickly, they're all covered. I mean, this city is not covered, but there's no way for our opponent to know that. We could very easily have sent a tank this direction. And maybe some games in the future I'll do that if like the meta develops that way. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we send the tank here, we can't cover this city, but then we can cover this city. So there's just lots of good options, and the fog of war is helping us, right? Like all these cities, they're not all going to be covered, but your opponent has no way of knowing which cities you're covering, and so it's going to force them to take risks if they want to harass, and if they end up getting unlucky, then they're going to get punished, and the city's going to belong to you anyway. Something else to keep in mind is we've got these 2 infantry up here now. And so these 2 infantry are for both of these cities. And if you don't do the T-copter opening, you tend to only have 1 infantry that can get to here. And so you're really late to getting to this city. And so this speed often will let you get to these 2 cities uncontested just because you're getting to this corner city. Remember, that's the city that I said is the easiest one to flip. You're getting to that city faster than you would otherwise. And that's good. One way to be less vulnerable to harassment is to get to the contested properties faster, because the timing window for your opponent to harass you is shorter, and that means they have to be more aggressive or take more risks in order to punish you. Okay, and actually I'm just going to leave it here. So this is the end of day 7 setup that you want to see. So we got these 3 cities. We're going to start working on this one. We've got an infantry for this city. And we've got these 2 other cities accounted for. It'll be day 9 before we start capping those. But we'll be able to cap both of those starting on day 9. And if we get all those cities, that's half map. So by day 9, basically by day 10, if we do not get harassed at all, we will have every single property on our side of the map. Not including the comm tower, but that's expected to be contested. So that's what makes this opening so strong. You are able to lock down the stuff that's yours very, very quickly, while simultaneously you're not really putting yourself at a ton of risk for harass. So it's very efficient, very strong. Let's look at another alternative opener. So let's look at this with player 1. Okay, I'm here as player 1 now, in bottom right. It's kind of weird. Okay, I guess the capture order is a little different. So I go this way, and I'm going to get the factory with this infantry. I haven't actually looked at the player 1 route in a while, so we'll all learn together. Okay, so 2nd infantry goes here. I think the reason... I wonder if you could even accelerate it further, but I think the income curve has to be this way. Anyway, we're just going to go with it. Just copy what I do. And so again, we do the skip here, where we're sending this infantry up instead of down to this property. We're delaying this southern property by 1 turn. Okay, we're going to kind of zoom through this, but basically the principles that you're seeing here are exactly the same that we saw in the other video. One difference for player 1, though, in the income curves is we'll start here. On this turn where we're building the T-copter, we end up with 11k instead of 8k. So we actually have enough for recon infantry instead of triple infantry like it would be for player 2. And so even though player 1 ends up doing all the caps on day 8 instead of day 7, you get the added benefit of having a recon to scout for harassment. So that is a notable difference. And additionally, not having the infantry from both bases doesn't make a huge difference in terms of boosting, because already for player 2, we were sending that infantry over this way anyway, because there was no room to put it. Because we're going to boost this infantry over to here, and then this infantry is going to go up here. So there's, even though there's no infantry here to boost, it doesn't actually matter. So again, this is just the mirror of what we saw in the other build. I built in artillery. You could actually build a tank as well. I just think that the recon and artillery kind of synergize pretty well together. So I went for the early artillery, and then I'm going to follow it up with tanks. But you do whatever you want to do. You could opt to not support this side at all and send a tank up this way to try and deal with potential harassment. And in this game, it looks like I'm going to face some harassment up here. So if you want to play safe against that and focus more on defending these properties instead of securing these with support, that's an option you can do. And that's kind of why this build is good, right? Like, even though I'm going with the T-copter, I can choose to support any of the properties I want to with defense. And so your opponent can't know for sure, like, oh, he got a T-copter, so that means that these properties are vulnerable. You can't know that for sure, because I could choose to defend any side that I want to. And so no harassment ends up being free of risk. And so this recon is going to park on the city, but it's so early, it's not going to see anything. Like, it can't accomplish anything. I don't have any stuff up there. And I won't for a while, too. So again, this is just the exact same thing that we saw in the other build. But this is day 8 that all this is happening. I think I had better capture timing on the comm tower this time. I think getting a day 8 seems pretty good. I think I got a day 6 the other game. That was too early. And then again, one benefit. Excuse me. Probably should have moved this recon first. I didn't think about that, but before I started capping here. So we talked about player 2 gets all the caps on day 7. One advantage for player 1 is player 1 gets this cap on day 8. But that wasn't possible for player 2. And then this cap is going to happen on day 9. Which is the same as player 2. So player 1 is going to technically get to these cities a little bit faster than player 2 can get to these cities. And then player 2 is going to get to these cities faster than player 1 can get to these cities. So it kind of it balances out the risk between the orders. I mean, just look at all these caps, like here, 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 here. And even though Tordread sees this cap, like, harassing this is very risky because, like, there could be a tank here. If I built a tank last turn and sent it up this way, then harassing into here is suicide, especially against Kindle. And then I see the tank, and so this is bait. And so yeah, so day 8, the end of day 8 here. I'll just show day 9. So this is the mech build. So again, we invested some money into the T-copter, and we see like, oh, there's tanks here. We see one tank, but we know it's Tordread, right? So there's probably more tanks than that. So we want to compensate for the fact that we bought a T-copter. Well, now we're going to get, recon, artillery, 2 tanks, and a mech all over here. And it's going to be day 9 when we've got all that stuff. So we're going to have a lot of units that can fight against tanks over there really quickly. So good synergy. Getting the T-copter lets us cap properties quickly. Also lets us defend our positioning quickly as well. Okay, so that's that build. Let's look at another one. So we're back to player 2 now. So this build is almost identical to everything you've seen so far. The only difference here is that the T-copter, so we're on day 7 again for player 2. The T-copter is here instead of here, like it was in the first map that we looked at. So this infantry is 1 square further back, which means we don't see this city. But the advantage of this is that we can bring this T-copter all the way back here for mechs. And you can see we got a mech here. Don't know why I chose to build this mech here and this tank here. Maybe I was going to send this tank down this way. But anyway, regardless. So we're not going to spend too much time in this replay. Just wanted to highlight this is slightly more risky, I guess, because technically something could trap on the city and you don't have vision. Okay. And then the last version, I know many of you have probably watched this replay over on DJ's channel. Again, if you want to see a full match in excruciating detail, definitely check that out. But I just want to recap the difference here. This is exactly the same as the safe build, the very first video that we watched, but instead of sending this infantry here to the city that we can see is unoccupied, we YOLO him over here into the darkness onto this comm tower. And we're exploiting the lack of vision here. So again, if you're player 1, day 7 is the timing. If you're player 2, just be aware that it's pretty risky to go for it. It's great if it works, but if it doesn't work, then your cap of this city is going to be delayed. And yeah, that's just kind of how the risk reward works. So I think that is good enough for openings. Let's take a look at some replays. We're going to run through these rapid fire, just like we did for the logarithmic video. So we're not going to analyze any tactics at all. We're going to blast through these, and I'm just going to give you some things to observe as we run through these. So one thing to observe, where does the fighting happen? So what part of the map does the fighting happen? And also I want you to just pay attention to the comm towers. When do they get capped? Do they ever get capped? Who gets which tower? Do they ever flip? Things like that. So that's really all we're going to be looking for. And if there's anything interesting that pops out as I blast through these, then I will stop and cover it briefly. But we're just trying to get a general idea of how games on this map tend to go. So we got a Jesmir here, Tordread, and fyram. We got some early recons going on, so no T-copter. And so I want to highlight. So this is the day 7 position. We haven't started day 8 yet. So this is day 7 without the T-copter. Notice we don't have this city, we don't have this city, and we don't have this city. So we're not even capping. There's 3 cities that we are not capping because we don't have a T-copter. So you can just see like how big the efficiency benefit is of having a T-copter in terms of what cities you can get to in time. And all the other stuff is the same. Like there's no extra cities, so it was still like these two cities were also being capped, and these two cities were in the exact same position. So it's a pretty big difference for player 2. And then this is the this is the day 8 positioning, right? So it looks like fyram got this city a little earlier than the T-copter opening would, but I think these delayed? I don't think they're delayed. Anyway, this city is delayed, and there's nothing ever going to get down here, right? Like the infantry is really far away. Like, you know, this infantry is probably going to come over here to this city, and then this guy can get one of these two. So that's the sacrifice, right? You don't get the T-copter, you're getting limited access to these properties, and this one as well. And maybe you can get to this one a little faster, but that's, in my opinion, it's not as good of a trade-off, but that's just me. All right, let's keep going. So you can see a lot of fighting for the corners, right? So player 2's locking down this corner, player 1's locking down this corner. You see the strong sides kind of being the normal strong sides. Actually, both of them get the comm towers uncontested, which is pretty surprising. This is very silly. This is very overextending. I don't really, I mean, maybe Jess is like the only one that could try to get this, but this is, I don't know. That's not usually how the map goes. I guess in this scenario, they both kind of committed everything to their strong side, and so because there's just no resistance at all, they're able to get those cities. But that is pretty unusual, I think. So again, lots of fighting around the comm towers. So this is like danger zone. Like player 2 does not really want to be there. You're getting into overextending territory. And this is all, we're getting close to overextending territory. Oh my god. This is, you don't ever want to be here. This is ridiculous. This is not a good idea. Don't ever be here as player 1. This is not cool. So you can see where the fighting happens. There's been a huge brawl here. And this is actually one of the reasons why infantry fighting becomes very important in this map. Because it does tend to be this area and this area that tend to have the big vehicle fights, which means if you get infantry dominance of the corner while the vehicle fight is going on, then you're going to generally be able to put pressure and capture these corner properties. So when we talked about comp and about like how many air units do you want to build and the value of having more infantry, that's one of the benefits of that. Okay, and that's the end of this one. So they actually flipped comm towers. Did they flip comm towers? Am I crazy? Did they get backwards? Okay, they did flip comm towers. Interesting. So yeah, so they kind of got the comm towers at the beginning, and then they both front shifted to the other side and basically flipped them. So that's kind of weird. That's kind of a funky game. But I think both players never really brawled on the same side until later on in the game. So interesting data point. Let's look at another one. This is Kantbei versus Reimer, also known as Nightmare of Heiankyo. This one is Max versus Eagle, so just keep that in mind. First thing we're going to look at is where we're at day 7. So this is Kantbei. This is Kantbei after day 7. So we got this property. We don't have this one. We don't have this one. And we're not even close to getting these two. So again, T-copter is good. And then for Rhymer, so this is our day 8 capture state. So we don't have this one, we don't have this one, and we only have one infantry that can even begin to try and get these. We do have this one ahead of time, which is good, but that's the only benefit. So this is kind of a weird cap timing because it's like, it's kind of too late, honestly. But if you're going to go for the early cap, I think you should go earlier than this. But yeah, regardless, let's see where the fighting happens. See, we got fighting for this corner here. Equals kind of locked down this corner. And you notice that this whole side, there's no infantry reinforce from player 1 down here. And over here, there's, I mean, once all these infantry are gone, like, the infantry reinforced this way is also pretty rough. So if you don't get the T-copter, your infantry reinforced to your strong side is really going to suffer after your first initial batch of infantry. And that's the end of this one. Okay, look at another one. This is Starflash versus LukeTepes. This is a Olaf mirror. Okay, so this is our day 7. This is our day 7 for player 2. Because this is the start of day 8. So again, don't have it here, don't have here, and we're going to not be here for forever. And actually, we should have had this one. Looks like we have this one a turn early, which is kind of interesting. So kind of a weird opening state. And then, so this is player 1's day 8, end of day state. So again, we're missing this. We're in position to get this, but we're not going to be able to get this. And actually, this infantry is like going up here. I guess this infantry here kind of has the option value to go for both these properties. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that, actually. I think that's cute. So again, lots of brawling around the comm towers. Infantry dominance up here because of the black boat reinforce. So again, no T-copter. So again, you can see like all the vehicle fighting is here, but then this infantry is like solid snake on a stealth mission to that corner because all the fighting is happening up above it, and this is like total domination of this corner. Like, it's pretty wild actually how out of control that got. You can see they've got one comm tower here, and then green is trying desperately to secure this comm tower, which is kind of the wrong one actually. This game is really wild. Like, again, this is the harder comm tower for Starflash to get, and so taking this one as player 2 is really tough and ultimately unsuccessful, and Starflash gets both, and that's a wrap on that one. So yeah, don't let your opponent get your easier comm tower there. That's what we're going to learn from this one. And then last one is Tordread versus Brother Long. This is another Jest mirror. Okay, so this is player 2's end of day 7. So again, we're missing here. We're going to be able to get one of these. Brother Long has a lot of harass here, like 2. So recon's on both sides, so we'll see how that plays out. But again, missing these and here. Missing out on a lot of properties. for quite a long time. And then this is player 1's. Did I look at the wrong side? I don't know. It's been a long video. My brain's starting to melt a little bit. Anyway, we've seen enough openers. Let's just see how this game goes. A lot of fighting going on over here and kind of, again, around this comm tower. So it looks like nobody's getting a comm tower in this one. Yep, still nothing. Okay, and so this game ends without anybody getting these comm towers. This is actually a really brawly game, though. Like this city never got capped, and this city never got capped. So a lot of aggression from both players there. Kind of a nice contrast. And really quickly, we'll go through maybe 2 of my games really fast. So again, like fighting up here. A lot of infantry down here. So I got the comm tower here. And I'm able to deny this comm tower. I actually gave up this comm tower. This was the first game that I played on this map. I don't know if I should have done that. I don't know if I should have given that up for free. But it's been a long time. I actually got an early Neo tank on this map. Oftentimes, I've kind of played more heavily into air units, but this is my first one on this map. And let's see, what was the resignation for? The resignation was because I took this corner. So I kind of had dominance there. And then I was going to probably take this corner as well. A little bit of an early resign, if you ask me. But I guess I was up like 50k. It's his turn though, so I don't know. Oh, I know why. Copters. Three copters to 1, and a Neo in there, and the anti-air just built. So you can't. I'm going to eat this corner and can't fight because it's all tanks, no anti-air. So yeah. Air coming down this way, very good. Air going up this way, very good. So that means if you're pushing this way towards here, make sure that you have anti-airs because it's very likely to encounter copters if you're assaulting into this area that I'm assaulting here. And then one more. Let's do not this one. The Kindle game. This was a good game. This is pretty solid. Tordread just locking down this comm tower. You put a tank on a comm tower, and as Kindle, it's kind of it's there forever. And then I get harassed in this corner, which is actually pretty well done by Tordread. A little bit of risky, but because especially as Kindle, if I had put this copter in a different position, I could have counterattacked from a city, which really would have messed that recon up, even with a copter. But this copter or this comm tower, I'm in a good position to deny it. So you see I'm kind of back because this is my weak side, but I have infantry in position to deny it in case Tordread wants to cap it. And Tordread is trying to cap the weak side comm tower. Which is just strategically very difficult because in order to get the weak side comm tower, you have to kind of control almost all the way up to here, which puts you very easily into overextending land. Because remember, this comm tower is 2 tank moves away from this factory, so it's very hard to control. Big fighting here, kind of skirmishes up here. So again, first city to flip, it's the corner city. Defending lots of capping going on here, but you can see even though Tordread's kind of winning this fight, like he's got units well on my side of the map, but I was able to flip this city, and he's going to struggle to flip this one. And forget about this comm tower. This turn was brutal. Yeah, everything blows up this turn. And that's what happens if you overextend too much on the weak side. You can really get clobbered. Yeah, so that about covers it for what we're going for. Lots of fighting here. Lots of fighting here. Flip the corners. Hard to get vehicles into the corners. Reinforce air this way. Make sure you have anti-air this way. And build T-copters. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you learned something, then make sure to check out the video that I did with Degis covering my replay against RIP. If you somehow have not seen that already, then definitely check that out. We go into a lot of detail about the tactics of a specific game rather than the map in general. But with that being said, hope you have a wonderful spring, and I will catch you whenever I have enough time to get back to it. But until then, see you later and have a good day.